Hey, what's up guys, Sam here, and today we're talking about the 10 things that you absolutely need to know but you're not being told before you move to Chesapeake, Virginia, and we're starting right now. This area has got a lot of positive feedback from people that live here, school districts, the communities, the comfort feel of this area, and all for good reason. There's lots of positives here, but I've noticed after looking through a lot of the reviews and the different websites that talk about Chesapeake, there's not a lot of negative stuff or the drawbacks to being here too, and I think it's important to find the balance between all the positives and the negatives so you get an idea of what it is really like to live here. So that's what we'll talk about today, and if you could, before we get into it, if you don't mind just tapping just lightly that like button for the YouTube algorithm, that will greatly influence my channel and it spreads the word. So if you love my videos, this really helps me a lot. Thank you very much. So now going into these 10 things about Chesapeake, a lot of these things involve moving here, things you just wouldn't think about before coming here. So first of all, let's talk about the actual location of Chesapeake, because this really helps a lot. There is the south section of Chesapeake. This is where a lot of the people that live in Chesapeake talk about schools, you know, the comfort and the suburbia. This is a big section of that area of Chesapeake. It's like lots of country too, goes all the way down to the border of North Carolina where just lots of horses and just lots of country. But if you go further north and west, you'll see central Chesapeake. This is actually called South Norfolk. Super confusing. It's called South Norfolk. This is more like the urban side. It's a little bit more commercial, a little bit older, those older Victorian style houses, but that's right in the middle of the whole entire area and right next to Norfolk itself. Then going further west, you'll get into areas like Deep Creek, that's like the southwestern side of Chesapeake, and also Western Branch on the far western side. So it's kind of like a horseshoe that goes all the way around Norfolk and Virginia Beach. So each area feels differently, and that will factor into some of the things we'll talk about. Number one thing we'll talk about is the tolls and the bridges. In the most recent years, Chesapeake has started to improve some of its roadways, including enlarging some spots. So because of that, tolls are being implemented in certain places. Namely, there's an area on Route 17 near what's called Dominion Boulevard. That's a road that connects all the way up to right close to Virginia Beach, all the way down to the south area of Chesapeake, close to where you'll see Cedar Road. This was just a straight shot for a long time. Then they added a toll, and so if you live on the southern side near Cedar Road, like close to like Grassfield School District, going up north towards Virginia Beach on this side does have a toll, and so you got to factor that into your budget if you do plan on living in this section. But going further east, you don't have that toll, so you could bypass that by going east around towards areas like Great Bridge and Battlefield Boulevard. On that side, there are a couple of bridges I want to talk about. Number one is the Great Bridge. Now this is in the heart of what's called Great Bridge, and it's a historic area. There's a battlefield here, a historic battlefield, and so there's a small drawbridge that divides the north side of Great Bridge and the south side of Great Bridge, and it goes up and down at random times because drawbridges allow boats to go through the waterway as needed. So it could be at any point in time, and it does really slow up traffic for several minutes at least. In addition to that, the road where this Great Bridge is very, very close together. There aren't many lanes, and a lot of cars go up and down this road, so it gets real trafficy, especially during rush hour. So this can slow up your commute going in the north and southern parts of Chesapeake into Virginia Beach. Now going east from there is the Centerville Bridge. This is even a more country area of Chesapeake, and it connects the southern side of Centerville Turnpike going all the way down south into North Carolina up towards the areas of Virginia Beach. But it's also a drawbridge and opens up for boats that go back and forth through the intercoastal waterway, and so it does go up and down at random times and is super frustrating. But if you add to that, recently it's closed 2 times for at least 6 months at a time, and it's actually currently closed as of February 2021. So for several more months you will not be able to go across this bridge, and that's frustrating if you are planning to live in this section, because if you can't go through that bridge, you have to go all the way around one side of Chesapeake towards the southeastern side of Virginia Beach, or going west across the South Chesapeake area on Mount Pleasant all the way down towards the Chesapeake bypass, which takes you back up towards Virginia Beach. But my point here is that that was often a direct shot for people that live close to this bridge. So if you do plan to move to South Chesapeake, check where you're going to live, because this will influence where you're going to be driving and what kind of tolls you might be paying. Now you'll see the high-rise bridge. This is a really tall bridge, high-rise bridge, but it connects the south, almost the Greenbrier area of Chesapeake, all the way across towards the Deep Creek side and the western side of Chesapeake. In it's super helpful, but it also backs up in traffic a lot. So they have now started building a second, you're going to double the size of the bridge. Well, in doing that, they will add some express lanes which will have tolls in them. So while there will be an increase of traffic flow or better traffic flow over this bridge without the express lanes, if you want to really bypass it for sure, the express lanes will be there, but it will be at a cost. So if you look at in certain spots, you might feel like you're a little bit boxed in between tolls and bridges, and you kind of are, but it's not the worst thing in the world. But if you do plan on traveling a lot out of this area, you're going to be finding yourself either getting through some backups like near rush hour near the bridges, or paying tolls to go around them. So if you find you're surrounded by these tolls and bridges, one thing you can do is hit that like button for the YouTube algorithms. Number 2 is septic tanks and well waters. So I've mentioned the south section of Chesapeake. Well, one of the draws to this area is the country, and people love the relaxed, rustic feel, and you can also get to like Virginia Beach and other cities relatively quickly within reason. But that being said, there are drawbacks to this too, mainly the well and septic tank things. So for instance, in a lot of the north-south Chesapeake areas, meaning like the areas that are most developed closer to the rest of the cities in the Hampton Roads area, this is not a big deal. This is like the areas in the north side of this area are all city water and sewer. So it's not until you go further down where you'll see more country and lots of long, straight down roads down close to the Virginia-North Carolina border, you'll start seeing all well and septic. If you're not familiar with well and septic, there are some costs, a lot of upfront costs associated with well and septic, namely, especially with septic tanks. Installing a new system can be upwards of $12,000, $15,000, $20,000 plus, depending on the size of the system and a lot of other factors. But my point here is that when you're down in this section, you are not paying the city for city water or city sewer, but you're going to be paying for the maintenance and for the installation and all the associated costs involved with the well and septic systems. Another thing I've mentioned before, but this is super important, is that every area, a lot of the areas in Chesapeake do have lots of different feels to them. So like when people recommend to you, hey guys, live in Chesapeake, Chesapeake is amazing, schools are awesome, like so on and so forth. Well, that is true in a lot of ways in a lot of places, but the feels of Chesapeake, depending on where you are, feel entirely different. I mentioned South Chesapeake is where you'll get a lot of the suburbia, lots of neighborhoods, lots of those high-ranked schools people like to go to, and compare this area up to areas of Virginia Beach. But going further west and northwest, central Chesapeake, the South Norfolk area, is totally different. Feels more like an urban area. Actually feels a lot like Norfolk in a lot of ways, and you will find some cheaper houses in here and some more value, maybe bang for the buck for the actual house. You will find that the neighborhoods feel totally different, and it's like almost like a totally different city. Then moving further west towards Western Branch, this has some similar elements to South Chesapeake, but it's still different also, and it also connects to other areas. For instance, Portsmouth and close to Suffolk also. So this area also feels different, still has some country elements to it, but school districts are totally different, and the drive to other places in, like for instance, Virginia Beach is way different. And also Deep Creek, which is between Western Branch and the other southern areas of Chesapeake. So this is kind of in between, like it feels kind of like Norfolk in some ways, kind of like Chesapeake in other ways. This is also a good place for like bang for buck. There's some good options here, but my point here is that there are several sections in Chesapeake that feel totally different. Now next is, you always hear about the idea of Norfolk can flood, Virginia Beach can flood. Well, that's true in some cases, but Chesapeake has some spots that are some problem areas too, namely over close to Cedar Road. This is the Grassfield School District. There are some neighborhoods just north of Cedar Road that are right near the Elizabeth River that can flood pretty badly. Now it's very localized, so I would don't assume that if you're over in this area it's going to flood. It's not this kind of a thing, but keep in mind, check the flood maps, and there are some that are like widely in high-risk flood zones, for instance AE, that can add to your insurance costs, and also of course concern you if you are trying to especially drive out of this area. The driving through these roads can be treacherous if there's a flooding problem. Then also going down towards Route 17, which is the George Washington Highway, there's a section down near Culpeper Landing, just north and kind of northwest of this, that there are some roads in here that have flooded. If you look online, you'll see some Culpeper Landing articles about some flooding that happened in 2016. I've noticed that the flooding issues over here are namely more towards just the north part of this area, but there are some streets that can flood and can cause some problems. And so that being said, because this city is all wrapped around certain bodies of water, especially the Elizabeth River and the Intercoastal Waterway and the Great Dismal Swamp, this is down in the south area here, with a lot of rain, then if you have big storms on top of that, it can create a situation where water can't get saturated in the ground fast enough, so certain areas can flood. Now, another thing addresses the country living here again. The streets down in the south side, the country roads, are dark in a lot of places because they're not well lit at night, and on top of that, they are often 2-lane roads with ditches. So when you're driving down these roads, you might be driving for several minutes, 10, 15 minutes in some cases, to your house if you live in the country. That's great because of that feel of being in the country, but getting there and back, if you're commuting in the dark especially, it can be a little bit treacherous. Just be careful. So sometimes this can dissuade people from staying in the very south, like the country elements of Chesapeake. Now next is, you hear a lot about the jet noise in Virginia Beach. There is jet noise in Chesapeake. The Fentress Airfield is in the southeastern corner of Chesapeake, and it's close to Virginia Beach, but it's in Chesapeake. And based on, like in Virginia Beach, where the landing strip is in relation to your house, there are places where jet noise can be a problem, especially on this section. So check, for instance, the ACU's noise zone map also to see where your house might be located in relation to this landing strip. But going to this eastern side of Chesapeake, even your Centerville Turnpike in that general area, there are some spots that can have some jet noise. If this jet noise does come and be a problem, I would talk to some neighbors close to where you might be moving to in this eastern side to see if it does influence that neighborhood that you're looking at. Now next is, there's almost zero public transportation. Now there are some. So if you drive up, like for instance Battlefield Boulevard, you'll see some bus stops that go, that stop periodically. But the frequency and the amount of time it can take you to get from place to place can be so long. I would just not base your whole life around it if at all possible. So some people do this and it works for them, but it's very difficult, especially because here there are a lot of long suburban roads, and so you got a lot of starts and stops. So if at all costs, if you can, please get a car. Now next is that in a lot of places in Chesapeake, especially in the south side where the country is, it is very hard to maneuver in the snow. So this is partially because of the road construction, partially because of the people that live here, but it does not snow very much in the whole area around here. So that means the people that live here don't really know how to drive very well in there, and me included. I'm not very good at that. You'll find some people that skid out, you'll find some people that just drive real slow, and on top of that, the roads, like I mentioned, some of them are narrow, those 2-lane roads with ditches, and so if you're down the country side of things, those roads are not being driven as frequently as up towards the north side where a lot of the businesses are. So if you're driving from the country, especially back to wherever you need to be, and you're crossing those long country streets, because they're not being used very frequently, they can add an extra level of like snow or packed snow or ice, in some cases black ice. So keep that in mind. If you do want to be in the country, you might find yourself drifting back up again into this other part of South Chesapeake that has more amenities in it. Now the next thing is that the roads in the South Chesapeake area specifically are a bit confusing. The roads don't run parallel oftentimes, so you'll see a lot of residential roads that go up and around and over, and so if you take a right off of a main road and you just keep driving, you can find yourself just going into a maze of little residential roads. So that's one thing about living in this south area of Chesapeake especially, is that it can get easy to get lost, and if you live far enough away from a main road, it can even take you 8 to 10 minutes just to get to a main road before you can get to wherever you need to be. Now if you want to learn more about moving or living in Chesapeake, Virginia, or the areas around Chesapeake, I've got videos here and here you can check out, or you can subscribe to my channel for more videos every week, including live streams where you can ask me questions and I'll answer them in real time, and I'll see you on the next video.